Hello and welcome back, folks. There was a video I recently did called Microsoft Word 2016 Create a Form with Submit button, and a few people were using it, and a lot of them were questioning how to send the subject line, because even though it does send the document, they're not able to send the subject line. But this video uses the active document.sendMail, which won't allow you to do that. And so the video I'm currently making right now is actually in direct response to many viewers of this video, including Lim, where they ask, how do I add an email address so that when the user taps submit, it opens up the email with the recipient email address already pre-filled. So this, and I responded to say, to accomplish this, we have to create an Outlook object and send a document that way. And there's a few other people who actually was asking about this, and I just didn't feel like going through the whole process, but I feel I have enough people asking about it that I should make a video showing how the process is completed. In this video, I'm expecting you already understand how to set up the Word document so that way you can have VBA ready to go for the code, and also expect you to understand that in order to save the document, you must save it with script enabled. I'm going to go through all of that, but I'm not going to go as slow as I did in this video that I'm showing right here. So open up Word and let's get started. Okay, so in the previous video, what we did was we created a form, and basically we sent that form and the document as an email attachment. And many times maybe people don't have maybe Word installed. I mean, that's highly unlikely, but perhaps they don't even have the same version of Word that someone else might have. Maybe they're using a Mac version, or perhaps you don't want to send it as a Word document simply because it adds it as an attachment, which makes it the file size a lot bigger. You may just want to send the form as an email to yourself or to someone else or to a team or something along those lines. So unlike the previous video that we did where we actually sent the document as a attachment, we're going to make actually the form is going to send the data directly to the email application Outlook or any email application that you have that you can use in VBA. And then it's going to actually send the email out through Word. So we're doing it a little bit differently, but it's more, even though the code is a bit more, it's more effective and more efficient when it comes to the end user or gathering this information or even sending the information. So let's go ahead and get started making the form. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I have my developer tab here available. If you don't have it available, what you want to do is you're going to right click somewhere on this ribbon here, and then you're going to go here to customize the ribbon right here. Once you get to customize the ribbon, you're going to go ahead over here on the right hand side and you'll see that developer. You're going to head click that and then click OK. I already have mine selected, and then you'll see this developer tab show up right here. So I'm going to click on that developer tab, and then I am going to add all the things that I need my form to submit in the email. I'm going to add that as labels here on this form because I'm going to grab that information, I'm going to use it in code, and then from the code I'm going to send it to the email. That's the process. So let me first create the first label that I need. So I'm going to double click here inside the header because I want that as the header. I'm going to now go to the developer tab, developer right here. And then I'm going to go here inside of this one right here. This is the legacy forms. And I'm going to click on this one. This is a text box. This is a label. This is a text box. I'm going to click on that text box, and then it's going to show up here, and then I can go ahead and expand that to the width that I want and to the height that I want. Now, right now, when you first put in that text box, it's going to be in design mode. Once it's in design mode, it means it's not going to act like it would if you were actually using it. So this allows us to go ahead and stretch it out and change the properties, that sort of stuff. So while this is selected, I'm going to click on this properties button, and then I'm going to change the name of this so it's more code friendly, let's say. So this shouldn't be called text box, but it should be called TXT for text box. So TXT stands for text. So that way I know in code this object that I'm using is a text box. So that's why I prefix it with txt. And then what I want to do is what's called camel casing. And all that means is when the first word starts with a lowercase, every other word starts with uppercase. So right now I have that as txt, and I'm going to call that title. And it's only one word, so it just starts with T, a capital T, sorry. And if there was another word, that would start with a capital, and so on and so forth. The reason for that is to make it in code. When you're dealing with it in code, it's more readable. And right now, we were not really dealing in the code right now. We're just preparing this label or this text box for code. Now, I also want this to have a different color. So these are all the properties to this text box. And I'm going to want, instead of this back color here, white, I'm going to click on this arrow, and I want that to be blue just so it can look a little different. And then I want to change the text inside of here. But first I have to get text inside of here so I can know how it looks. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to get out of design mode. And then I'm going to start typing in there. So I'm going to say something like, this is the forms, or the forms email title, something like that. And now I can go back inside of here, the design mode. And then once I'm in design mode, I hit the properties. And once I'm in the properties, I can actually now go change how this font actually looks. So I'm going to first notice that even though I clicked on the properties, you'll notice that over here, the way you can tell that this is not the properties of this text box is the fact that this right here, name, it says this document, but also you see up here, it says this document and it's a document type. So don't start changing things around unless you know you have selected the proper object and its properties are showing up here. So once I click on this, then you see that the properties, now I'm dealing with the properties for the text box, and the name of it is txt title, and now I can start changing things. So a lot of beginners kind of mess up doing that. They start messing around with the properties, not realizing that just because you had this selected and you hit the properties button, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the properties that's going to show up here. You just have to be assured of that. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start altering this font here. So I'm going to go here to font. I'm going to click on the three little buttons right here, dots, sorry. And this is going to pop up, and now I can change that to whatever I want. And I'm just going to change this to something bigger. I'm going to change the font style and click OK. And that's good, but I also want this to be centered. So I can go down here to, let's see, text align. I'm going to click on the down arrow and put center. And you can, continue messing around with it whichever way you want. When it sends it in the email, it's not going to have all these font titles and stuff like that. It's not going to look that way. This is just the interface for the user using this form inside of Word. And you can go ahead and resize this to whatever you want. But this is exactly how I want this. I'm going to just leave that there for now. And now I'm going to move on to the next form item. And the next form item is going to be the username. Now, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and click out of there. I'm double clicking down here so I get out of the edit of the header. But if I were to double click in the header, I can just go ahead and click on this close header and footer. So when I was in the header and I double click down here like this to exit, it's the same as clicking on that exit button down there. So now what I want to do is create a table that's actually going to hold all my information here because I just want things in order. So I'm going to go here to insert and table, and I'm going to draw out a table here. I'm going to do the first name, last name, email, and subject, and message, and send button. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to resize this table here. And this down here will be the send button. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hit merge cells. That's where my send button is going to go. So right now I want to go ahead and add another one of these labels inside of here. So I can go back to my developer tab. I'm going to now go here and I'm going to add another one of those text boxes. I'm sorry, I said label, I meant text boxes. So I'm going to resize this text box here. And actually I'd rather this text box be over here, because here is where I want my label for that text box. So I'm going to say first name like that. And then I can resize this so it has enough space for a very long first name if needed. And then here's going to be last name. And I'm going to take this text box, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it in here. And then I'm going to do the recipient. But I'm going to just put email here because email to. So there's zero confusion. I'm going to paste that there. And then I'm going to put the subject. Yeah. I'll put the email subject. And then I'm going to paste that in there. And then I'm going to put the message. So this is going to be message. Paste that in there. And the message is going to be a little bit, you know, you're going to want more space for this. So I'm just going to stretch this out. Something like that. And then down here is where I'm going to put the button. So I could go up here inside of the legacy forms and I'm going to click on this button right here. And it's going to add that button there. And then I'm going to stretch this button out to where it fits that entire bottom there. And I'm going to stretch it out down like that. So where this is going to be my send button. Now I can start formatting these and preparing them for code. So remember like when we did this one up here, how we changed the name and everything? Well, basically we got to do that to all of these here. So for this first name one, I need to change this to something like TXT because it's a text box. TXT, it starts with TXT. First name. So I'm going to click on this, make sure I'm in design mode. And if the properties are still open, I'll be able to see that this says TXT or text box 1. I want that to be called TXT first name. And then I'm going to do the same for the rest of these. I'm going to double click that one. TXT last name. I'm going to click on this one. And by the way, I do want to warn you of something, actually. You don't actually want to double click these, but sometimes they're not selected and then you're kind of double clicking. You just want to select them because if you double click them, what'll happen is it's going to automatically write code in VBA and it's going to just make extra code that you don't need. So don't actually double click these. What I'm doing is I'm double clicking slowly to make sure that that's the one selected. So while I am double clicking, it's such a slow double click. It's not the command to actually write code. So there's two kinds of double clicks we're dealing with here. The quick double click to go ahead and make a subroutine in the code, and then a slow double click to actually select it if it wasn't selected and it's not being selected off of one click. So right now I have this one called TXT message. Oh, wait, let's see. This one's... So I'm going to select this, hit the properties. That's first name. This one's last name. And I can see it changing up here. This one's text box. So email to, that's going to be TXT email. And I'm going to put email to, just so it's consistent. And then over here, I'm going to put TXT subject. And this one will be TXT message. Now, I also have to name this button because we're going to be using this button. And the label here shouldn't be called command button. So there's two things we're dealing with here. We're dealing with the label, what we see here, and then we're dealing with the name of the button that we're going to be using in code. So let's first fix what we see here. So with this button selected, I'm now in the command button properties, and I'm going to go down right here to the caption, and I want to change that caption to send mail. And now we can see that caption there. And just to stick with this sort of form that I had here, I'm going to change the font to the same font that I had above. And that's going to be this one here. And I think I made it bold. And I'm just going to make it much bigger. Like that. There we go. I can also select this and change the background color. So let's say if I don't like the color that it is, I can also go here and maybe change that color to something like that. In these, I'm going to leave these to the standard font because I don't want any confusion as to what's being sent, because of the font may look a little bit different depending on what's being written in there. So we'll keep these consistent. Now I need to go ahead and change this button's name so I can use it in code. Now instead of TXT, we're going to use BTN, which stands for button, and I'm going to call it send. So now we have everything set. Everything's named, and we're ready to now go in the code behind to be able to start editing this.